Hello, and welcome to my kitchen, or welcome back if you were one of the few who watched the last video. I realized in the last video I didn't even tell you my name. My name is Cecilia. I live in a small town. It's about 50 kilometers west of Stockholm. I'm not a chef. I like to cook. I really do. And I've spent the last 30 odd years preparing the family food. So I do know a little bit about Swedish cooking, I hope, after all this time. I do like our traditional dishes, and I hope to share some of our traditional cuisine with you all. So welcome to the channel. And today we're going to make something called Laxpudding, which literally translated means salmon pudding, which does not sound great. So I thought I'd call it salmon casserole. So I will show you the ingredients. So let's get started. In order to make this salmon casserole, you're going to need potatoes, 8 to 10, depending upon the size. You're going to need salmon, of course. There wouldn't be a salmon casserole. This is Atlantic salmon, fresh Atlantic salmon. I would suggest that you use Atlantic salmon as opposed to Pacific pink, because I just think the Pacific pink has a different texture, so it doesn't quite work out the same. I'm sure it'll work, but it just is a little bit different. Traditionally, this is made with cured salmon, gravlax, which is like gravlax, which you may have heard of, but gravlax is more sugar than salt, and this is more salt than sugar. But they didn't have any in the store, so I got fresh salmon. You just need to add a little bit more salt to the dish. You're also going to need 4 eggs, an onion, you're going to need dill, and you're going to need, then here I have 3 deciliters of milk, 1 deciliter of cream. And we need to start with the potatoes because you need to use boiled potatoes. So first we have to peel and boil the potatoes and then let them cool a little bit before we go on with the rest of the dish. I think you're going to enjoy this. This is a great dish. It's very easy. So let's just get started. Got to turn you off. I have to go turn you off over there. So start by peeling the potatoes, of course, where they're going to boil them. And while we're putting on the pot, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about the history of this dish. It's quite an old recipe. As you've probably noticed, we're now doing voiceover. It's easier for me that way. Anyway, you add the potatoes, add a little bit of salt to the potatoes, and then we'll bring it to a boil. Now this dish is it's first mentioned in 1820 in a cookbook. It's probably a lot older than that. Salmon has been a staple of Swedish diets for a very long time, and this was probably a way to use leftover salmon. So once they've boiled, the next thing you need to do is just to pour off the water and then put them onto a plate and leave them for a while to cool down so that they're cool enough so that you can handle them. So this is part 1 of this dish. Part 2 is doing the onion. Now you either take 1 fairly large onion or a couple of smaller ones. You need to peel the onion and then chop the onion. It's quite basic. And once that is done, we're going to saute them in butter until they are nice and soft and golden. At this point, it's probably a good idea to turn on the oven. 200 degrees Celsius, about 400 degrees Fahrenheit. And then we just bring in the onions and saute them over a medium to low heat until they're nice and golden. We don't want them burnt. When the onions are done, just set them aside, and now it's time to slice up the salmon. So you want to slice this on a bit of an angle so you get some nice big pieces of salmon for the casserole. Not too thin. We want good chunks in there. So just slice up your salmon. When you're done with the salmon, you just slice the potatoes. They should be cold enough to handle by now, so just slice them into maybe centimeter thick slices, slightly less than a centimeter. These will go in the casserole, and after you've done all of your potatoes, you need to chop the dill. This is where real chefs will go nuts when they see this, but I always cut up the dill and just put it in a cup or something, and then I just cut it with scissors until it's chopped. I find this is much easier, but you can go ahead and chop your dill any way you want. We just need 2 to 3 tablespoons of chopped dill. After that, it's time to assemble the casserole. So you're going to need a casserole dish that's fairly deep, and then we just need to sort of grease the bottom of it with a little bit of butter. And after that, we put in about half of the sauteed onions as the first layer. Once you have about half of the onions in there, you're going to start adding a layer of the potatoes. And after the layer of potatoes, you are going to put a layer of the salmon. Actually, all of the salmon probably, because you're only going to have 2 layers. It depends upon the size of your dish, of course. If you're using a smaller and deeper dish, you may end up with more layers. But for this dish I'm using, it's only enough for 1 layer. Add some pepper, and if you're using fresh salmon, you're going to need to add a little bit of salt as well. If you're using cured salmon or smoked salmon or gravlax, then you don't need to add any more salt. Hopefully you've salted the potatoes enough so that the dish will be salty. And then after this, we add some of our dill. Or actually, all of the dill. Next, add the rest of the onions. And then the last layer of potatoes. A little bit of salt and pepper on top, and the casserole is assembled. Next, we crack open the 4 eggs, whisk them together, and then add the milk cream mixture and whisk that together. Add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper, and then we pour it over the casserole. Now we pour the egg and milk mixture over the casserole. Make sure at this point to cover as much as possible and make sure that there are no little bits of salmon sticking out because they'll get burnt. Now it goes into the oven for about 40 to 45 minutes. I think this one took 45 minutes, but do check it after 30. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is to melt some butter to pour over the finished casserole. Believe me, it makes the world of difference to the taste. You really need the butter on top. So here is the finished casserole. You'll know it's finished when you can put a knife into the center and it comes out clean. So all that's left to do now is to plate up, pour over the butter, add some peas, little slice of lemon, and then sit down to enjoy your dinner.